lot of tenants today across Nigeria, we have this recurring problem where you just get a text, WhatsApp text from your landlord.
Yeah.
Please be informed that your rent for the next year, they could take it from 1.5 to 3 million. You know, that's a question that you should answer at the tenancy agreement stage. How will the rent amount change?
Who handles repairs after paying a rent of 3 million naira, and then something get damaged on the property, and you expect, should the tenants handle the repair, or should the landlord that collected the money handle the repair?
You ask that same working class to deduct 2 or 3 million for a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom, and then you want to increase that rent, and you are sending it within 1 week, and you want working class. It's Yahoo boys you will get to pay that kind of money.
Welcome back to Cause and Effect Show, the smart conversational law podcast where fine print is turned into clear conversations. I am Jumi, and with me is my co-host
JT.
So again, we have another question from another viewer, and it's titled "Eviction Laws. Can a landlord evict after rent renewal?" That's the title of the question. Okay. Then the question says, what does law actually say about eviction? If a tenant has just renewed rent and paid in full, can a landlord still issue a quit notice? What rights does the tenant have, and what legal steps must the landlord follow?
Okay.
This person must have probably been evicted before.
Yeah, probably. But the response to that is in parts.
Okay.
Can eviction be, or rather, can a quit notice be issued just after rent renewal? My presumption is that the rent renewal is, of course, for a term.
Yeah,
right?
at least for a year.
For a year, yeah. So the question is, the quit notice that was served, is it saying you are to leave before the end of your term, right? Or at the end of the term? If it's the first one, then obviously that's outside of the law, because it doesn't allow you to evict before your term runs out, except, of course, you've breached certain parts of the agreement, because you know some rent agreements have moral, clauses inserted in them, like you can't use my house for a brothel, stuff like that. So if I find you as a landlord using it for a brothel, it creates a new scenario where I can evict you before the end of your term, or at least I can put in motion the eviction. So I'm assuming all of those things aren't present, and the landlord still wants to have you evicted before the end of the term. I mean, in such a scenario, it's obvious that number one, the landlord will have to either refund you the prorated amount. But generally, the general opinion I have of that question is that you can't evict before the end of the term. I can serve you 8 months notice
ahead of
the If I've done that, there's still not a problem, because it means by the end of the term, you are sure not renewing. Even if you are renewing, I'm not collecting the money from you. So yes, it's possible for you to get a quit notice way ahead, right? So long as your renewal term hasn't run out in that quit notice. And okay, let's also talk about the scenario where the landlord actually wants you out before the term ends. Do they get to keep your money? No, right? Because they will be owing you for, number one, they've even breached the peaceable enjoyment.
No, I think you mentioned something earlier. I think that's if you've not as a tenant broken any law as well. For example, you're not using the premises as a brothel.
Those are the conditions
for kidnapping.
For kidnappers.
Of course, you understand. So as long as those
elements are
elements are not in place or something,
then you are definitely entitled to a refund, and you should claim such refunds.
But I don't cause it generally. Well, in a place like Lagos, I've read of different stories online whereby, well, but most of the time, I don't think any landlord or any property owner in their right frame of mind, a tenant will, let's say, renew rent or pay a consideration for a property, let's say in January, and then by February, you're telling them you want them out, and it doesn't make any
It
sense.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So the person is also asking what rights does the tenant have, what legal steps. Well, as long as the tenant does not breach, there's no breach
Yeah,
of
yeah. One thing you should ask
contract
yourself
as
is,
well.
you've not
What have you
breached the
done?
contract. Yeah.
If those things are, if you have not breached this, or
Yeah.
you're not causing, there are some tenants who they are just a menace to the, maybe you're occupying a
Other
compound with like
neighbors.
10 people or
Yeah.
this, and then the particular tenants keep causing troubles for other co-tenants as well. It could
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
reason.
I mean, in that scenario, let's use that scenario for instance. Because number one, you are preventing the landlord from carrying out the obligations for the other tenants, which is peaceable enjoyment.
Exactly.
So such a landlord can decide, I would serve you a quit notice before the renewal term ends. And the question is, the affected tenant in that scenario, what are their rights? You have a right to refund.
Yeah.
Not of the entire sum, obviously.
Of course, it can be entire sum.
But you have a right to refund for the period that you did not stay.
Used.
So what do you do in that regard? It's not legal advice, obviously, but you write a letter of demand in such regard that, based on my estimation, I have lived, or I will live in this property for X terms, let's say 3 months. The prorated balance that should be refunded to me is X amount. Kindly refund to, and you list out your account details, and that's like the general rights available. If they refuse to refund you, what you can also do cleverly under the law is to add a punitive interest rate to it. How enforceable that is, I do not know. This is not legal advice, but you can introduce that interest rate that you should, because obviously you can't hold my money for, you can't say you want to pay me in 2030.
No.
If I demand for it, you should refund me maybe within a reasonable number of days.
Yeah.
It could be 1 month, something like that. So at least it's clear that that tenant also has rights.
Yeah. So because the person is asking, what does the law say about eviction? Anybody can be evicted.
Yeah, so long as you're doing it within the
boundaries
state
of the
law.
Yeah, within the boundaries of the law, I believe anybody can be evicted. And so, back to today's episode, we're talking about landlord versus tenants, the legal love-hate story. I feel like there's a love and hate story between landlords. Yeah, we love each other at the same time we hate each other.
Sometimes, yeah.
So we're talking about a relationship that starts with hope and often ends in tension, WhatsApp arguments, or even police threats. That happens a lot. Landlords and tenants. One side says, I just want my rent on time, my property respected. The other person says, I just want peace and not to be harassed every weekend. Abi?
Yeah.
And somewhere in the middle sits a document most people sign without reading, the tenancy agreement. I believe this is always the foundational backbone to all these tenancy issues. So now the big question is, what do tenancy agreements really protect? Does it protect the landlords, or is it the tenants it protects, or it doesn't even protect anybody at all?
Yeah, I'd say it protects either party to the extent that they take, reading it and reviewing it seriously.
Many tenants believe that once they sign the tenancy agreements, they feel like, okay, yes, I'm fully protected just because you've signed a paper, a documented, whatever it is.
Yeah,
they feel like they are fully protected.
It's a common error, and the general disposition of most tenants is, if I sign a contract, I will assume that it protects me, or it gives me some comfort. We've talked about this before too, reading the fine print. I think that was our first episode.
No, even after reading, of course, a lot of people still read the tenancy agreement. They still feel, when you are signing something, it feels like you are being protected. Your interest, your personal interest is being protected. Also, what's it called now? The landlord, the property owner also feels like, okay, at least this is my property. I can also behave or do whatever I like with my property. It's mine, right? So it's not yours.
Yeah, both are two wrong assumptions. Yeah, because on the landlord side, yes, it is your property. Yes, you do have ownership rights.
Yeah.
Right, but the tenant also have what they call possessory rights.
Yeah.
Which is respected under the law. On the tenant side, yes, you do have possessory rights, but they have limitations. You know, there's this expression that where your own stops is where another person begins. So, you know, those are the limitations that both parties have to pay attention to when we are talking about what a tenancy agreement contains and who it protects.
Okay, so basically, people, like I said, people see tenancy agreements as a shield, not just, tenants in quotes. Everybody, anyways. They see the tenancy agreement as a shield, like, okay, it is protective, but the question is, what does tenancy agreement, what does it actually protect? Because in the sense, it's not your property, you're only paying, or the owner is just leasing out the property for a certain duration of time. It's still theirs in their own name. At the same time, like you said, as long as the tenant is occupying a particular place, they have the right to possession at that moment. They are in the possession of the property. So to an extent, they also have certain rights, especially with the fact that it's being paid, it's being used by them at that certain moment, whether they pay or not.
Yeah, we can get into some specifics in terms of what a tenancy agreement should actually protect. And, you know, to speak to, I think the most obvious aspect of it in many cases is, okay, how much is your rent, right? Your tenancy agreement should have clarity on that. That's like the first aspect of it. How much is it? A subset of that question is, if that amount should change, how will it change is the most important question. Because, you know, a lot of tenants today across Lagos State, across Nigeria, I would say it's maybe a peculiar problem in Lagos and Abuja specifically, but, you know, we have this recurring problem where you just get a WhatsApp text from your landlord, or it could even be a lawyer that you didn't know before, that just texts you that your rent there's so please be informed that your rent for the next year, they could take it from 1.5 to 3 million. You know, so, you know, that's a question that you should answer at the tenancy agreement stage. How will the rent amount change? And if you are, most smart people would say, let's fine, it can change, but let it be at the mutual agreement of both parties. So that's one element of what your tenancy agreement should do. In that regard, it protects both parties, because our topic is love-hate. How does love turn into hate? It's conflict. Conflict arises when, you know, interests clash and one person says, oh, I want to increase it to X. The other person says, I can't afford it. So, you know, you reduce this friction when your tenancy agreement can protect both parties. You know, when it is well drafted. This is one of those examples when we talk about the rent review. What's the frequency? Which means we can't be doing year on year. I know that's what most Lagos landlords want, but we can't do year on year. Let's look at it at maybe every 2 years, and then we talk about, okay, what's the formula for increasing it? Some people will say inflation. Some people will say we can do 20%.
I think generally, at least to a certain degree of knowledge for Lagos landlords, I think most of them depends on inflation. Any small inflation like this is like there's a switch in everybody's in their heads. Everybody's head, like, okay, rent has to be increased from not just increase. There are sometimes that people complain about 100% increase. How do you increase a rent of, let's say, 1.5 million to 3 million naira? That, as in, within a space of, let's say, 2 years. To what extent? When do people? I mean, it's a whole lot, but then, especially in Lagos, it's like Lagos is a special, special kind of territory on its own when it comes to issues of tenancy agreements and all of that. Then another issue is when it comes to tenancy agreement. I think one of the things that should be done, of course, it should provide clarity. For example, who handles repairs after paying like a rent of 3 million naira, and then something get damaged on the property, and you expect, should the tenants handle the repair, or should the landlord that collected the money handle
I mean, the question is what's the type of repair? That's usually where another conflict happens. The general principles are, okay, if it's a significant repair, right, landlord should be responsible. If it's a your switch, maybe your switch got burnt, or some minor changes, you would have recourse to the tenant. And that's where, the clarity also matters, because you can have all of this outlined in your contract to say, if it's a major repair, the question is, okay, what's a major repair? Everybody, a reasonable man's test will be able to determine what a major repair is. Let's say, the door got broken down, the pumping machine, a utility used by everybody, maybe all the tenants. You can't say all the tenants should start contributing. Some people do, some people do. But the question is, okay, does their contract, that's the tenancy agreement now, does it put that responsibility on the landlord or the tenant? If he puts it on the tenant and the tenant agreed to it at the time, well, they have to live with it. But that distinction needs to be made as well.
Yeah, another thing that I think most tenants don't know that the agreement, the tenancy agreement protects, is the fact that even if there's going to be an increase in the rent, they have a right to notice ahead before inflation or increment of the price, as it's
and that's where some landlords get it wrong. If we are to speak directly to landlords now, you just put yourself in the shoes of the tenant, right? They say I saw one tweet or something the other day about working class. Who is the working class in Nigeria? How much do they make per month? An average working class in Nigeria probably makes 800K. Let me rephrase that. An average working class in Lagos, not Nigeria.
Not Nigeria.
Because then we will get into a whole lot of debate. But let me say in Lagos, probably makes between 500 to 800 or 1 million per month, right? Which puts us at maybe 7 to 12 million per annum. You ask that same working class to deduct 5 out of 12 million, or 5 out of 7 million, or let's even be more realistic now, 2 or 3 million for a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom. The prices are getting ridiculous now for rent. And then you want to increase that rent, and you are sending it within 1 week. And you want working class. It's Yahoo boys you will get to pay that kind of money. So we have to be realistic, right? And just to go back to your point, it's very important that notices are way ahead of time. Especially if some people also use it as a strategy to just evict.
Evict a particular tenant.
Yeah, so we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
But in a normal landlord-tenant relationship, you should give reasonable notice, like you've pointed out.
Yeah. So again, the issues between the real sources of the conflicts that do arise between landlord and tenant is always this issue of notice.
Yeah.
Notice. Increment of rent without proper notice, and then also forced eviction. You know, when you are forcing a tenant out of your property, at least give them reasonable amount of time to search for other properties. And I know that the law stipulates, like, okay, even if a tenant defaults in renewing their rent, at least they have a minimum period of like at least 6 months before you forcefully evict them out.
So I may need to correct that impression too, though. Generally, that's the how do I put it? Let's use the Lagos tenancy law, for instance. It says where your contract is silent or on notice period, 6 months notice is applicable.
It's applicable.
How most people read it is that they are entitled to 6 months, right?
That's it.
And that's not accurate, right? Because if your tenancy agreement says Mr. A or Ms. B, you are you agree that the notice period under this agreement will be 3 months. It's 3 months your landlord is entitled to give you. We should get that what's it called, gray area cleared out. Okay. But let's assume that there's no rent agreement, or there's a rent agreement but no notice period. Then yes, you are entitled to 6 months clearly as a notice. Yeah.
Well, even without whether there's a what's it called now, notice period or not, do you think if a landlord should give a tenant okay, within 3 months you want you out of my property, with 3 months can a person successfully search for another property?
Right, obviously
in a place like Lagos within 3 months, like to your taste?
Obviously not, because
exactly.
I mean, as a maybe a personal story or personal reference, I intend to live where I'm currently staying, and I'm already looking for a house. And my rent expires February next year. You know, so that's just to give an example of the kind of timeline
exactly
people use to look for suitable accommodation. But I mean, a tenant in that position, the question is, at the point where you are probably agreeing with that your current landlord, should have raised the point that
of notice period.
Yeah, please, could we extend this notice period? Because it's just a reasonable request. It's something your landlord could be open to. Yeah. Your contract is not cast in stone. They can amend whatever period they have put there. But yeah, it's something people should pay attention to.
Yeah, that's true. I think if tenants knows the request for the notice period at the point of signing the tenancy agreement, it helps preserves and of course shield the tenancy relationship between them. And also for landlords, they should also use professionally drafted agreements. I've seen agreements, especially for these what do they call them, agents? No, they are not real agents, so they are agents. Sometimes I feel like calling them agents of the devil.
It's accurate.
Yeah,
actually.
I've seen a what's it called, an agent drafts in quotes an agreement, and even me as a lawyer, I'm like, what kind of agreement is this?
You'll be thrown aback.
Of course. All right. So I think landlords should use professionally drafted agreements. I mean, so that your tenants
they charge legal fee. Most of them
don't want to pay.
No, what I'm saying is it's something you charge, but they want to pocket it.
Exactly.
So just do the right thing and engage a professional.
And also, they should also follow the notice requirements. So if you are stating that, okay, at the point of the tenancy agreement is 3 months you are giving, is 6 months you are giving, follow through it. Don't come at the end of 1 month and then tell them, okay, there's inflation in the country. We are all living in the country together. Nobody is living in a different country. So you don't have to oppress people. You don't have to oppress people just because they are staying on your property and all of that you get. All right. So, but another issue is the for harassment or threats when it comes to occupying a property. in Lagos. I've seen that over and over again. Because I remembered during a law school, when I was in law school, during the externship period, I was staying with a relative at Lekki then. And then all of a sudden, I came back from court one day, and then before I came back home, they've demolished. I saw that the part of the building has been demolished. They cut off the water, water supply, the access to water supply, and then the lights too. And I'm like, okay. I spoke to because I was staying with my uncle then, and then I spoke to the wife who's also like, what's happening? And then I learned that the person they got the property from, that rented the property to them, leased it from another person.
Oh dear.
And do you understand? And then the real owner of the property is coming back into the country. And then, of course, there was no time frame. They are giving them limited time to, evacuate from the premises. And in my mind, of course, being a law school extended, I'm like, how can we fight this? That was when I realized. No, that was when I realized that there's a difference between facing real life legal issues, and then reading it in books, and then in the case of blah 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 blah. But then it was really annoying to see such, because by default, when there's no light, when there's no water, what else is left in have in the house, right? Because that was a whole lot, but then. Yeah, I realized that it comes with this Lagos package. Even the Lagos package,
the part of the risks that come with it. But I mean, if we are to assess such situations, it also speaks to the duties of the landlord, right? Because that's general description, you enable peaceable enjoyment.
Yeah.
Once such an example is a breach of that, this thing. And it's also one of the representations of a typical landlord is that you are the rightful owner of the property. Yeah. I think that principle was also, in the example you mentioned, wasn't adhered to, because obviously it wasn't even the owner that was leasing the property.
That's the thing. But of course, a lot of landlords see themselves as God. It's your property. Nobody is fighting that with you. But they see themselves as good, especially these Lagos. There's a thing with Lagos and properties, and I think it's just because the population in Lagos, as in respect to the number of properties that
it's the demand supply problem.
The demand supply,
really.
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, it's better for tenants to also know their own rights, and also for landlords to also know their own rights at all times too as well. The tenancy agreement is not protecting one person over the other, and at the same time it's not cheating one person over the other. Your Mr. Landlord, your property is your property. Tenant, your rent is your rent.
Yeah, one thing we should probably also quickly touch on is this thing that is happening. I think I saw a video very recently where where I'm going to is wear and tear versus doing repairs. We've talked about repairs already, but if you are making some variations on the property, one of the most important things to do is to get the consent of your landlord, right? Okay. I think that's like a general principle under most tenancy agreements. Like
variations, like you mean, for example,
for not painting now, for instance, but you want to. Can you demarcate? No, I mean, if it's temporary fixtures, maybe yes, you can demarcate a building and all of that. But when you're making certain major changes to the building, have it in mind that whatever, what's it called, outcome at the point where you are living, you may be financially responsible as a tenant for it. Like if they maybe hit something and it causes structural defect, the landlord can come and sue you for 1 million, 2 million to pay.
Do people really do that?
Some people do. Like I was saying, the video I saw very recently, the tenant was essentially almost destroying the interior of the apartment because I think he had expended major costs. Okay. And the landlord
I think I saw something similar. Okay, yes.
So something like that, some landlords are funny, right? They may want to take advantage of the improvements you made.
That's true.
Right? To
For
evict
example,
you
for
and
people
say,
that use, for this POP, assuming it was, assuming you got an old building and then you renovate, you use POP, you use
exactly.
civic also and all of that, and then the landlord after a year comes say that, that's not fair.
I mean, that's what people will want to say first. But the question is, let's even start from, do you get consent to do such? In most cases, you should get consent.
In most cases, you should get consent, but the realistic part is, as a landlord, you are giving a Gen Z. You're giving out
Gen Z.
No, you're giving out a building that is, let's say, 30% like old and rusty too, and you're giving it out at a price of let's say 2.5 million naira. You yourself, will you put down 2.5 million naira to rent a building that it's not fit?
We are talking about pricing now, so
no, because that's the thing. The person who wants to renovate, of course, if there's a part that is leaking, because I've seen people like rent old buildings and then they set it up to their taste, improve it, put it and all of that. So if after spending money on improvements, even the money on improvements is more costlier than the rent. So imagine spending money on improvement, and then the landlord comes back after 12 months and tell you that you have to leave because this and this. You take your improvements with you.
It's just the Wild West and how we do things.
Is that we think, but it's not supposed to be.
I would say one thing to consider too is, when you are in that kind of situation, try to get a long lease, right?
For like 5 years, 7 years.
Yeah, because when if it's something you want to use for a long term, because lease terms are different from tenancy. So if you are doing something like that and you're doing it with tenancy, then you aren't getting the right advice. Because if you are pumping money into a place, tomorrow they will come and say they are giving you quick notice. So getting a long lease is better.
Another trick I think that can also work for the tenants that is deciding to do improvement. After collecting tenancy agreements from the
landlord,
you yourself should bring an agreement from your own lawyer. Landlord, Mr. Landlord, I am improving your property. If you come within this time frame also, so I will get my money back for all the improvements I made on your property.
All of that can sit in the tenancy agreement.
The tenancy agreement now is coming from a party, from party A to party B.
Yeah, but you can negotiate it. It's negotiable. Because what you then have is like 2 agreements, which unless you have conflict provisions, so it's negotiable. A misconception some people have is that whatever they give, they get, and whatever they are given by the landlord is what they get. It's a wrong misconception. You can actually negotiate it, right? You can say, look, I want to make certain improvements. These improvements are acknowledged and approved by the landlord. If for any reason you go back on the term of the tenancy or your word, you would make necessary reasonable refunds, as prorated or agreed.
That's true.
So
the real lesson of today's episode is also to know that tenancy agreement is not a weapon, it's not a threat, and it's not a free pass. It's just a framework designed to protect both the tenancy and also the landlord, and also the sanity of the society as well. So one person is not cheating the other, like you said. And this issue of people, that video that you mentioned, where the person has to start destroying all the, nobody is winning. You're not winning.
Exactly.
It's
a lose-lose.
It's a lose-lose. There's no lose-lose. It's not even exactly. The landlord is going to start all over to fix the damages.
The interior.
Well, it's a lot, but again, it's landlord and tenants. We love each other somewhat, we hate each other somewhat, just a little bit. All right, so that's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening to Clause and Effect Show, the smart conversational law podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and share this video with someone currently fighting with their landlord or tenant. And don't be a landlord that fights tenants. Don't be a tenant that fights your landlord. And if you have questions, send this via our mail address, clauseeffects.co@gmail.com. You see it below on the screen. It might just feature in a future episode. Until next time, read before you sign and know what your clauses really mean. All right, see you next episode. Bye.
Bye.